Warning. The views and beliefs in the following program does not reflect the views of Boom Broadcasting. We give full creative control to our creators and do not believe in cancel culture because here on this panel, we believe that cancel culture has, is, and always will be an orchestrated plan by the man. Viewer discretion is advised. Do not attempt to adjust your viewing pleasure or any of your viewing sites. There's nothing wrong. We have a different show format for you this Friday, as we're going to be talking here on Boom Broadcasting Presents Beyond Sports Spotlight. This is where we talk about serious subjects inside of sports. We had some serious things that have gone on in sports that we don't really get to talk about here on Boom Broadcasting. But we're going to spotlight that today. We're going to run this episode here today in the spot where my podcast would be, called Quick Hits. I'm Shannon Smith, a.k.a. Podcast Smitty. I am a fan of sport, but I'm also a fan of serious reactions and serious sports discussion. With me today is host of Three from Deep, Jason Calenzo, also host of Sideline Savants, and Sean Lucas from Instincts TV and Movie Podcast, and also Wrestling of Destiny, which is on Saturday. We're going to discuss something that has been on our minds for this month, especially being Black History Month, the Rooney Rule. Now, the Rooney Rule was brought into inception in 2003. It was meant to open doors for minority coaches. But as we can see this year, a record of 10 head coaching jobs have came up in the NFL. Only one minority candidate, who is Robert Saleh, who is Lebanese, was hired on one of these 10 head coaching jobs. What is looked at that's supposed to be something that opens the door for minority coaches looks like it's not doing much. The track record of 23 years of this rule. Are we sure that this rule is opening the door for Black coaches, or are we just headed for more mediocrity in this trillion-dollar train that we call the NFL? All three of us here, we love football as much as you do, but also too, when are we going to look at this and see that we have a problem? So this is going to be an open forum. We're going to be talking here. We're going to have a discussion amongst us. We want you to get involved. Make sure that you drop a comment. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe to the Boom Broadcasting YouTube channel. We have a plethora of podcasts for TV, movies, sports, and sports entertainment. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this, fellas. Once again, thanks for being a part of this episode. There will be more to come. Now, let's get into this. So Jason has did a lot of research on the Rooney Rule. He has the rule and its inception. I'm going to open up the floor to Jason. So Jason, go ahead and let everybody know the Rooney Rule. Just give them a refresher.
I appreciate that. Yeah, in 2003, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, headed by Mr. Dan Rooney, the late owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, was created to start inclusion in the NFL, to really try to break down some barriers, not only for Black coaches, but for a lot of the different positions in the NFL, and also women, minorities, etc. So it was created to foster change. It's interesting that it happened in 2003. Now, 2003, yeah, that was a long time ago, but that it was needed, that this policy was needed. But it was great that the NFL did start this, and that they kind of recognize, yes, we see that there is a problem. At first, the rule made sense, and a lot of people started to follow it and listen to it and kind of really open their eyes. But after 23 years, not much has changed. I mean, they have opened it up. The Rooney Rule, you had to focus on hiring practices, especially where you had to interview at least one minority candidate for different positions within your organization, whether it be GM, whether it be head coach, or whether it be another coaching staff. As it's progressed, it's now more than one. It's now two. They've also opened it up to the GM position, where you have to initially interview um, a minority for that GM position too. Um, but since in 23 years, that's pretty much it. Like they've opened up a lot of different and started a lot of different fellowships and a lot of different committees within the NFL to try to promote diversity and inclusion. And for some of the lower or non spotlight coaching positions, whether it be strength and conditioning, whether it be some of the other positions within an organization, I mean, it has helped for that. We have seen a lot of minority candidates. We've seen a lot of females and a female assistant coaches come into the NFL. So in some aspects, it's helped promote this diversity and this change within this predominantly male, dominant sport. You're seeing the females in there come in there too. So, but over 23 years, the head coaching position has really fallen short. You have over 70% of your workforce in the NFL is black. That's a huge number. Less than 9% of the head coaches in the NFL are black head coaches. You have 3. And that to me is appalling. And of course, with just this, what happened this past year, where you had 10 head coaching positions and not one black head coach was hired, that is very disheartening. And it kind of was disappointing, because here we are 23 years later, after this Rooney Rule was was created, and this policy was created. We haven't seen any change. In fact, I think we've taken steps back, because people are circumventing the rule. They have these token interviews that they're doing, where they're just hiring people just to appease the Rooney Rule, which is disgusting. And it's so disappointing, because I do love football. I do love the NFL, but they do have a problem. Shawn, give me some of your thoughts on where we are today from where we started back in 2003.
Well, I think back in 2003, Jason, when the rule came out, I was very glad that this type of rule had come out, because it was going to give minorities, not only blacks, but as you said, women, people of other ethnicities, whether you were Japanese, Puerto Rican, Mexican, Haitian, all different races, a chance to now have a crack, not even at a head coach job, but just some type of job on the staff. Like you said, strength and condition, all that stuff. But now looking at 2026, it's kind of like the rule, and you said it best, is taking steps back, because we're not seeing it used in effect. And I'm going to go back maybe 6 years ago when I was watching First Take, and they were talking about the Rooney Rule. Stephen A. made a great comment, because they brought in Deuce Staley to interview for a job. Deuce Staley, great running back for Pittsburgh, by Philadelphia Eagles, great been assistant coach on Andy Reid's staff, assistant coach in Philadelphia, running backs coach over in Carolina. So he's done a lot. Great resume. But they brought Deuce in, and they said, like Stephen A. said, it was just a warm-up interview. We're going to practice. And I mean, all of us have worked in careers where you had to interview people for positions, and you get maybe a job application comes in, you get 20 of them, you pick your top 6 or 8 that are strong candidates, but then you got maybe 9 or 10 that may not be as strong as your 6 or 8, but you say, hey, let's bring this one in first. No disrespect to this person, but let's let that be the warm-up interview, so we get a good rhythm, get a good balance of how we're going to ask the questions repetitively. I'm going to go first, and Jason's going to follow up with a question, then Shannon's going to follow up with a question. Right. And that's how I feel like the Rooney Rule now is in effect. We bring in a minority, whether a person of color or a different minority, bring them in just to say, we did the job. We followed the rule. We met the expectations. Now, round 2, the next candidate, let's get down to the serious interviewing. So I feel like the rule has done a lot when it first was introduced. But as you said best, Jason, the rule now has taken steps back and major strides back for minorities in positions as a head coach or GM.
Definitely. And I want to get you guys' takes. And to me, I'm thinking this has a lot to do with the head coaching position itself. It is probably the most visible position in an organization. I mean, we talk about the GM right now. There's 7 black GMs in the
Right.
NFL, which is better than what we have as coaching. But even the GM, they're not on camera. It is a behind the scenes position.
Right.
The head coach interviewed the most, is prominently shown on the sideline between the head coach and the quarterback. I mean, talk about 2 positions in an organization that are shown. I mean, do you really believe that this issue is because this is a higher profile position, and that's why you see more diversity in the lower ranks from people that you don't see, that are on the sidelines, that kind of blend in, as opposed to someone that's sitting in the podium directly in front of you?
Yeah, it does. It has to be about the head coaching position because, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jason, because let's look at these 10 jobs here because this was an NFL record 10 head coaching vacancies in the NFL. Let's go down the line. This is the reason why we're talking about this. Of course, this is one of the reasons we're doing this show because let's look at this here. Buffalo. Joe Brady was hired by the Buffalo Bills. He was the offensive coordinator, of course. They brought in a guy that was inside of the organization. Okay.
Right.
I can understand that. Clint Kubiak with the Las Vegas Raiders. He was an offensive specialist.
Mhm.
Clint Kubiak, he was a coach's son. Was he not? So,
Yes.
of course. So, Clint Kubiak going to the Las Vegas Raiders, let go of Pete Carroll. So, once again, also, too, Pete Carroll was older. He was one of the older candidates as well, too, that was let go of. And, of course, when Joe Brady assumed of the former head coach here with the Buffalo Bills, then we go to New York. We go to the Giants. John Harbaugh was hired, and that was one of the most high-profile hires in the NFL. When he got fired from Baltimore, it was only a matter of time before he ended up getting a job. We all knew that. We understand.
Right.
So, with that being said, he goes to the Giants. Big hire for the Giants. Okay, great. Then Kevin Stefanski. He goes to the Atlanta Falcons. He was fired by the Cleveland Browns. We all know the Cleveland Browns, the way that the mediocrity has been with the Cleveland Browns. But Kevin Stefanski, he was a coach of the year at one point in time. So I understand that. Todd Monken goes to Cleveland after filling Kevin Stefanski's spot. He was a former Ravens offensive coordinator. Okay. Mike LaFleur going to Arizona, another offensive specialist. Jeff Hafley going to the Miami Dolphins, and that was very interesting. I'm going to get to that one later on because Mike McDaniel was in the Rooney Rule as well too, and we got to talk about that as well too. Which that was kind of weird how he fit the Rooney Rule because he said that his mother was Caucasian, but he identifies as not Caucasian. He ended up getting the offensive coordinator spot over in Los Angeles. That was kind of weird to me when he was a former head coach because he fit the Rooney Rule at one point in time because he was a coach that had to be interviewed for the Rooney Rule with Miami at one point in time,
Right.
which was weird to me. Don't know. Then Jesse Minter going to the Baltimore Ravens. He was defensive coordinator. And Mike McCarthy, which was one that really scratched my head as well, too. Not a bad coach.
No.
Not at all. Not a bad coach. But he sat out from coaching for, I think it was about 2 years. And he goes to Pittsburgh. Of course, Mike Tomlin, resigning. He ended up leaving the squad. And of course, Robert Saleh, who is the only head coach that was non-white. He's Lebanese. He was the only one that did it. That raised an alarm with the NFL because all these coaching vacancies, you would think more than one would be. And you look at some of these interviews, just like what Shawn said, some of these interviews might be the warm-up interviews you're going to take. I remember Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley was widely regarded in Philadelphia. He was a running back. He played very good football. He was a good offensive coach, very good running back coach. What did Deuce Staley do after he was not hired as a head coach? He left. He went to Carolina, doing his thing in Carolina. He was a part of those firings as well too. A part of that, which not so great, but that's what we're kind of looking at. Are they hiring guys like the offensive line coach? They're going to hire the offensive line coach. Oh, to check off the box for the Rooney Rule. Oh, we're going to interview the running back coach here. No head coaching experience whatsoever. You gonna really hire this dude, or are you waiting for a John Harbaugh, or are you waiting for a Clint Kubiak? Are you waiting for this guy so you can go ahead and check off the boxes for the Rooney Rule and get the guy that you really want? So that kind of makes me wonder if the rule is what it is, or have GMs found a way to skate around it. Now, the intentions were good. Get minority coaches in the door. And it has worked to a certain extent, but the head coaching job is the reason why this is being spotlighted here, because of that. It's cool if you get the running game right, the offensive line right, the defensive line, maybe the defensive coordinator, maybe. But as head coach, slow down there, buddy. You got to prove yourself a tad bit. So.
And it's not even prove yourself. And one of the things that the NFL does is they regurgitate coaches, which makes it even more blatant. I mean, you have Stefanski, no real success in Cleveland. I mean, he had a couple of decent years, but literally no real success. What made him better than a lot of the other coaches that interviewed? I mean, those are the kind of things that make you scratch your head and make me wonder. And what really pisses me off is the whole spirit of the Rooney Rule, and that's the other thing that I really find insulting with the NFL and how they've really handled this and how they're very quiet about it. Mr. Goodell, old Roger, has made one comment about it during the Super Bowl, that they're going to look into it, and we still have room to change, etc. Here we are 23 years later, and you still have to have that kind of conversation where you're regurgitating coaches. You obviously have an issue. There's a glass ceiling. You like these guys for defensive coordinators, Brian Flores. You like them for offensive coordinators, Eric Bieniemy. Those guys were tops in what they do, but yet they could not get a head coaching job or even get a chance. It just, and what happened with Flores down in Florida, that's a whole nother subject. But you can regurgitate some of these other coaches, but if you're a fired black head coach, you're not getting another job. We're going to keep you as a coordinator. And this is where development comes in. Okay, you're letting guys in the door. You're letting them be some of these lower coaches, but where is the development to let them become a head coach? All those guys that you named that were offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, where is the minorities? Where is the black offensive coordinators? Where's the black defensive coordinators that are becoming head coaches? They're not making their way through the ranks. They're not letting them bubble up enough, and they're not giving them that. You talk about the coaching tree. These guys aren't part of that tree because the head coaches that are there, they don't want that. They don't want someone like that to come up behind them and take their job. And I mean, it's say what it is. So, and that's what's more disappointing. Shawn, what are you thinking when you think about how the NFL just churns through the same coach after coach, but yet a black coach, once they get kind of in the door, they're pushed back out.
Well, I mean, you see that all the time. You look at New England last year. Had a great coach down there. Did not have the type of season that New England were expected to have. And I mean, hats off to the Patriots. They got to a Super Bowl. Vrabel turned around. No disrespect to Vrabel. He's a damn good coach. Would not compare with nobody. Great coach. But you see that a lot. I mean, you even go back in past years, I think all of us can remember, Herm Edwards up there with the Jets. Herm got out of New York, got a chance in Kansas City. Things went well. Then he hit those down spiral years. Herm's out the league. Now he was working for ESPN. Had to go coach because he still had that passion at Arizona State till he got let go there. Same thing with Lovie Smith. Great defensive coach. Great head coach. Got the Bears to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Had some other brief stints, and then Lovey went to college, and now I don't even know where Lovey's at now. I know last time he was kind of just, they said, doing some scouting and stuff like that, helping out with some teams. But you feel like the African-American coach and the other minority coaches, Ron Rivera, another great coach, you feel like they just don't, when they get in, if they don't have as much success like a Bill Belichick, where they took time to build this thing in New England. Same thing with over here in Philly with Nick Sirianni. Yes, we coming off a Super Bowl 2 years ago, but we gave him time to build a program that once they don't build it after 2-3 years, you got to get out of here. And you just said it best, Jason. When they get out, it's very hard for them to get regurgitated to another team or get the head coaching job. I mean, we've seen several great minorities. Ron Rivera is a great example. Had great years in Carolina, had a good year up there in Washington, and then just kind of faded to the picture. Now he's a GM in college somewhere. It's just kind of hard for them to get their foot back in the door.
Yeah, I don't like it.
But we got to look at it as well, too, because doing the digging, the Rooney Rule, the reason for that happening is because the late, great Johnny Cochran was about to sue the NFL because there were only 2 black head coaches in the NFL around that time, and that was Tony Dungy and Dennis Green. Tony Dungy got fired. Tampa Bay wins the Super Bowl with John Gruden as the head coach. Denny Green ended up getting fired. I think he sat out a little bit and then went to Arizona. And he had a wagon of a squad at that time with Cunningham and Robert Smith and Moss and Carter. And he coached Dante Culpepper a little bit, and they ended up firing him. And the NFL had 0 black head coaches at that time. You know, Johnny Cochran was about to go sue the NFL for what it was worth. And then the Rooney Rule came into effect because he talked about how both these head coaches were actually having success. One bad season got them fired. And so that was what he was trying to do. He got his own study, showed that these black head coaches were actually doing good, and the Rooney Rule comes into effect. Now, the NFL only has 3 black head coaches as we speak, you know, and of course, adding Robert Saleh into it makes it a 4th. But 3 black head coaches are there. You know, you got Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay. You got D'Amico Ryans in Houston. You got Aaron Glenn in New York. My question to you fellas is, do you think that the Rooney Rule applied to them? Were they the first options for these squads?
I would say New York with Aaron. Aaron's a great OC. Guy did magic up there in Detroit. I would say no. Now for Bowles, I would say yes, because I think with Bowles, Bruce Arians self-appointed him as, this is my successor. And one thing about Bruce Arians is he's always been good about whether you're any race. If he feels like you are a great coach and that you can lead a team, he will tell them, this is the guy after me that needs to have the job. So I felt like that D'Amico Ryan may could have been one that had a good interview and, you know, we can win with this guy right here. But I just felt like Aaron was kind of like a settled job. And I hate to say that about Aaron because Aaron's just a damn good coach when it comes to offensive play calling.
They wanted Ben Johnson. And when Ben Johnson signed with Chicago, because that was the Jets' first pick, guaranteed. They would have interviewed both of them, but he would have been the first pick. I think Aaron Wood is the runner-up of that interview. You look at even a Marvin Lewis. He had a great stint and a long stint in Cincinnati, which was awesome, but just never made it. And after he was done with that, disappeared.
And
gone. I mean, completely almost out of the lean.
Went to the college ranks and disappeared.
D'Amico Ryans to me, I think, was not a Rooney Rule thing because they loved him in Houston. He played in Houston, and he was a good defensive coordinator in San Francisco. You know, I hated losing my 49ers. I hated losing them, but it was only a matter of time, and Houston was the right spot for him. I don't think the Rooney Rule applied to him because that's who they wanted. So when it comes down to it, when we see this guy's 67% black NFL as we speak player-wise, but you only have maybe 3% of head coaches out there. Out of 32 teams, you only have 4 head coaches that are minorities. And that's really raising a red flag here. And the Rooney Rule was supposed to counter that. So you look at some of these head coaches that have been over the years, you know, Marvin Lewis being one of those coaches, Dennis Green, and even looking at Steve Wilkes,
Yes.
Right.
Steve Wilkes, the Panthers job, when Steve Wilkes actually brought that squad back together and actually started winning after they got rid of Matt Rule, he didn't get the head coaching job. He ended up going to San Francisco. San Francisco had him as the defensive coordinator, and they fired him.
Right.
On top of that, which I feel like was unjust as well too. I felt like that was unjust with the Panthers not hiring him. I think it was unjust that San Francisco used him as a scapegoat for the Super Bowl on the defensive side of the ball. And once again, like you said, Sean, disappeared. Steve Wilkes looked like he was going to be a shoo-in for Appalachian State's head coach job, and that didn't happen because that was his alma mater, and we didn't see that. And what is going to become, and Aaron Glenn inherited a mess with the New York Jets. That's a pure mess on his hands. Todd Bowles, I think, has a good setup in Tampa Bay. D'Amico Ryans, clock is ticking with him because at first it looked really good because C.J. Stroud hit a streak, and that defense is still good. He's a very good defensive coach, so of course that defense is going to thrive. But going to Jason on this one, the coaching tree is something to speak on because these guys, it seem like they're good enough coordinators, but they're getting jobs that are dumpster fires. On top of that, they're getting jobs that are dumpster fires. And you know what happens when the dumpster fire hits? And Aaron Glenn, this season, it was not good for him because they made him look like incompetent at the head coaching job. The media did.
Right.
Which was another thing. And I'm not saying that, Aaron Glenn doesn't deserve the same treatment as these head coaches here who have had bad seasons. Zach Taylor having a bad season, and he's a white head coach over there with Cincinnati. But you can always go back to, Joe Burrow was hurt. He didn't have his whole unit. And the front office pretty much made that team look bad on defense. And you hear all of that stuff. You don't hear about it. And we all thought Zach Taylor was going to get fired. We all thought that.
Should have been.
Yes. And
I
agree. But then you look at Aaron Glenn, and it was like, oh, man, it's only a matter of time before the Jets just let him go. Which, to me, I'm kind of glad they didn't. But also, too, he's not in a good predicament. So, D'Amico Ryans, time will tell with D'Amico Ryans. Same with Todd Bowles. And now Robert Saleh is going to a Tennessee Titans squad that really needs a reboot because the AFC South is getting better. And this is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about the coaching tree, and that's the other thing too is you get these the minority or black head coaches that finally get the job. They are so concerned with keeping the job that they don't focus on developing the next guy. They don't focus on bringing guys up. And then even like look at Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin was with the Pittsburgh Steelers for 18 years. The owner created this policy. In 18 years, how many head coaches came out from under Mike Tomlin?
Wow.
Bruce Arenas is kind of labeled under there, but he was under Bill Cowher already, and he already had some other history. But that's the other thing, too. You give the guy the keys to the car, you'll let him drive, but you got a governor on it.
There you go.
We're gonna let you be a head coach, but in the back of your mind, just remember we're allowing you to be a head coach here in the NFL, and that's what concerned me. It's like, okay, we're knocking, the NFL as a whole, but it's these teams. These teams are what's controlling the narrative here. These owners are what's controlling the narrative. Pittsburgh, 18 years. Mike Tomlin, you would think any coach that had enough cachet with a team to go, guys, this is the next head coach. I want him to come up. I want to bring this guy up. I want to spotlight him. I want to make him an offensive coordinator. I want to make sure he finds a job. I'm going to make phone calls. I want to make sure people know this is the next dude. You look at Tony Dungy, how many people came from his coaching tree. You look at like a Bill Parcells. You look at, Bill Belichick, how many people came out of there, how many coordinators and you're telling me in 18 years with one organization, you have not been able to develop one head coach and develop one black head coach to come out of your tree to give somebody that chance. And I'm not saying he didn't give guys chances. I'm not saying he didn't hire them as coordinators and put people in position, and give them a shot. But it's like you only get so much of a shot, because we know once you get to this spot here, you better toe the line what they say upstairs, because I'm still worried about my job. And that's what really was just bugging me is, okay, this team, the Steelers, they created this policy with their owners, but yet Mike Tomlin couldn't really flourish and produce, because he's probably still worried about, I got to do all this work to make sure I keep my job. Being a black head coach in the NFL, I can't focus on anything else. And that to me is a part of the problem, because you're seeing all these coaches hired that are assistant coaches, that are offensive coordinators. They're all being developed, but none of them are a minority. None of them are black. None of them are prominent. You look at Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City. He was the next big thing. When the Chiefs were on fire, that offense looked unstoppable. He's like, oh, he's got to get a job. He's getting a job. This is the next guy. He's coming up. He's never sniffed becoming a head coach. He's back in Kansas City now. But you got this guy that, I mean, I don't know if they just interview bad, what it is, but you're talking about somebody that was a prominent offensive coordinator who was integral to the Kansas City Chiefs dynasty and Patrick Mahomes' development. He couldn't even get a shot. But yet you're bringing out Kubiak and all these other guys that are terrible. Stefanski, who couldn't do anything in Cleveland. Like you're letting all these other guys play and sit at the table. But somebody who has success, who has rings, you're not allowed at the table.
But
that to me is very concerning.
I'm glad you brought that up, because, of course, the Rooney Rule was supposed to be in effect to get minorities to get these jobs be interviewed. So what it is, we're getting them a seat at the table and opportunity, because we all knew in the 90s at that time, were black coaches getting that opportunity at that time? Were they getting that opportunity in the 80s? Were they doing that? They weren't. So the Rooney Rule had great intentions, and of course, best intentions is another way of saying, hey, sorry guys, I tried. But the Rooney Rule did help get these guys in the door, help get opportunities for these coaches to get into the room and actually be interviewed, because we all knew that the NFL was not going to do that. Like,
right.
Until the Rooney Rule came. So of course, if they didn't want this rule from the get-go, if that's the case, of course these GMs are going to find a way to get around it. See, what I don't understand, and this is what is kind of set me, not set well with me, is this whole thing with Shedeur Sanders and how his father is doing this and this and this and this. But what is the league? What is the coaches in the NFL based off of? Nepotism and who you know. So how are we going to sit here and pile on the Mannings and the Sanders? Now, it's cool when the Mannings were able to do it. It was cool when that happened with the Mannings. But with Deion Sanders, God forbid, he have a hand in his son's draft and have a hand in any of this, and then the young man dropped 4 rounds when he was a first round draft pick, and he dropped just because of his dad being around. But the nepotism going on. I'm a 49ers fan. Kyle Shanahan, being the offensive guru that he is, his dad. You can't sit here and tell me that his dad wasn't one of the reasons why he got into the league. We can't sit here and say that. We're going to sit here and talk about, oh, well, we have this rule in place so we can get these guys interviews. Are you sure that some of these guys are getting interviews right now? Is it because of who they know? Is it because of who the GM knows? Is it because of who is cool with them? We can sit here all day long. Look at the Dallas Cowboys with what Jimmy they got rid of Jimmy Johnson. Got rid of Jimmy Johnson because he was bigger than he was bigger than the GM, bigger than the owner. And what does Jerry Jones do? He gets Barry Switzer in there. Barry Switzer wins the Super Bowl, lives off of one Super Bowl, does horribly, and gets fired. These guys are putting in their college buddies, putting in their friends' sons, all this other stuff. It has been proven in the NFL that that's been going on.
Yep.
But yet you give this rule right here that says, oh, we're going to give you an opportunity, but we're going to give a guy an opportunity and we're going to check off the boxes. These GMs aren't dumb. They know how to do this. They've been making money for years. These GMs, these owners, they're not dumb. They know how to make the money. They know how to keep the money. And they know how to put who they want to be employed here. They know that. But they want to give you a rule that says, hey, we're giving you a chance. We're giving you a chance. Why are you not taking the chance? Because you're not hiring guys. You're not interviewing the guys that would be a head coaching material. You're getting the running back coach, the line coach, the assistant defensive coordinator, the strength and conditioning coach. You know he's not going to sniff a head coaching job ever.
Yeah.
But you're doing it to check off your boxes. These GMs are finding ways to check off their boxes and comply with the rule. But then you see 9 head coaches get hired that are white guys and 1 minority, but you're adhering to the rule. No, you're not.
Yeah. And then that's the other thing too, is you talk about those interviews, and they talk about the spirit of the rule, which is another thing that kind of pisses me off, and that's like just spit in everybody's face here. You're not adhering to the spirit of the rule. That is damn insulting.
Yes.
You shouldn't have to look at the spirit of a rule. The rule is there to kind of give you a guideline and wake you up that you're doing something wrong. And It has not done any of that in 23 years. And this is not a year later. This is not 1975 where we're just coming out of, some heavy race relations and things like that. This is 2026. And we're still having these types of discussions. We're still preventing people from getting these positions because they are a coveted, in-your-face position. You are essentially the face of a franchise. And these ownership groups, and let's call it what it is, all these white owners, because there's no black ownership in the NFL. There's some minority owners. I know Magic Johnson's part owner of I think it's the Rams, and I think he's involved. And there's some minority owners out there, but for all intents and purposes, it's not about white owners. They don't want a predominantly black head coach as the face of their franchise. I mean, let's call it what it is. They don't want it. They don't like a strong black man. I mean, then you talked about Deion Sanders and his boy. This happened with the Ball family.
Yes.
And that because you had a strong black man standing up for his children, but yet you're going to blast him for doing that. You're going to fault him for doing that. They don't want to see that. They don't want that in the NFL. They want what is appealing to the eyes and who they think their constituents are. Even though their players are 70%, almost 70% black, but their viewership, we want to make sure we're watered down in vanilla to make sure that you can digest it. And because these owners don't want to see someone that is of color driving their car. And It's disappointing, and it's disheartening, and it's disgusting. And again, the spirit of the rule, every time I hear that, it makes me nauseous. Shawn, I don't know what you think, but to me, to force somebody to adhere to this rule, to this policy, to force a franchise, to force an owner, is embarrassing in 2026.
Well, like you just said, Jason, that same thing. It's 2026, and we gotta force you to interview a minority. That's step one. You got to interview a minority. Then you can keep going with your interview processing with your panel. In 2026, still have that. That is disgusting. But there's no contingency plan when you just said it best. When a minority coach gets hired, he cannot bring in too many other minority coaches to set up a contingency plan because, once again, the viewership of what you see is what they want to see on TV. And one thing I do like about the NBA is the NBA has figured it out. They figured it out and they understand things. You know, I take a guy like Mike Brown, great NBA coach. Mike Brown had a bad time. Cleveland let him go. Had a few bad times in Sacramento. Got on that Steve Kerr and the Warriors. Reinvented when Steve Kerr had to go out for a few weeks when he had that back surgery or something that was going on. He was the associate head coach coaching the team. Mike Brown was able to use that to interview to get another job as a head coach. The NBA does not have a problem putting minorities as the face of their franchise. It's just the NFL, when you said it best. When you turn on the TV, who do we want to see when that camera zooms in before they go on that 30-second break or that 2-minute warning break? They want to see somebody of a different color.
You know what the difference is between the NFL and the NBA? There's a huge difference. The face mask. See, in the NFL, you have the face mask. So you don't have to see who's playing. You only see a name and a number.
Right.
You don't see a color. You see the color of the jersey. See, in the NBA, you see the players. You have the faces. So you have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to have a black head coach or I'm going to have a minority head coach because that's the face that everybody is seeing, but that's also the faces that they see on the bench.
Yes.
When you're in the NFL, you don't see that until they take the helmet off. And most of the time, that's on the bench and you don't see that. So, I mean, that's a huge, huge reason why the NFL can get away with what they do is because they know the only time you really know somebody's face is if they're in a TV commercial. I mean, how many players does the common NFL fan truly know if they were standing right in front of them with street clothes? Not very many.
Not a minute.
Because you're not going to know what their face looks like.
I do agree with that, man. That's a good point.
Spot on.
That's a good point, man. The face mask is very important to the NFL. It keeps everybody from seeing that. But also, too, I do want to get into this as well, too, with the Rooney Rule doing what it does. Is the opportunity more important than getting the job? As in having the opportunity to interview. Now, once again, we're talking about this in the 90s, beforehand, in the early 2000s. Was the NFL doing this? Was the NFL going to do this until it was brought in their face before they were starting to take away their money? So that was one of the reasons why they started doing this, because at the end of the day, they probably knew they were going to lose, and that Johnny Cochran and them was going to take their money.
Right.
And you mess with somebody's money, then that's where we're going to have to go into things. So the fact that opportunity is there, is that more important? The opportunity as in getting in the room. Is getting in the room going to help get this problem solved? Getting in the room, that is.
When the rule was first written, getting in the room, that was spot on. That's
huge.
all you wanted, was to be able to get in the room, sell myself in this interview, as anybody who's interviewing for any type of job, sell myself for why I should be the candidate you select to lead your team. Now, fast forward to 2026, the opportunity is not there no more. It's getting the job now. It's the job. It's the job. I feel like now in 2026, there's enough coaches that if you interview instead of just one minority, 4 or 5, the jobs could, so one of them could bring in the job. So I feel like now the job is more pressing than the opportunity versus when the rule first came out, the opportunity of getting in the room just to be able to speak up, to say, hey, I'm being interviewed. I'm prepared to sell myself now. So I think now it's more of the job is more prestigious that you're interviewing me. Well, why the hell I can't get the job?
Yeah, I mean, when it first came out in 2003, to be able to get him in the room, what was was key, and that's great. But all they've done is added on another room. Just because you're in the room doesn't mean you're in the room. There's another room.
Spot
You know,
on.
you're in the waiting room. That's not the room. So I mean, it just because you open the door doesn't mean all the doors are open. And again, embarrassing in the NFL. Now they have again. I do apologize. The NFL has done some great things with the Rooney Rule, the Nunn Wooden Scholar Scouting Fellowship, the Bill Walsh Diversity Coaching Fellowship, um, coaching opportunities. They work with the HBCUs. You also had the Fritz Pollard Alliance was created outside of that with a lot of the scouts and coaches and front office. So a lot had positive has come out of this and really has helped diversify the NFL at a certain level. But it's insane how none of it relates to the head coaching position. That position is still predominantly a white male position of who you know or who you
Right.
used to coach with. The Sean McVay effect, because I remember there for a hot minute, every assistant coach that Sean McVay ever had was getting a job, and that's where my man from Cincinnati came from. You know, he had a lot of head coaches that came out of kind of that tree. So it's amazing how many coaches come out of those trees of a Sean McVay, but none come out of a Mike Tomlin. So I mean, just it's insane. So this diversity has done some good in the NFL, but it just absolutely disgusting how it has not done anything for the head coaching position.
I do agree with that. Now, wanting to get into okay, so the Rooney Rule, we all figured out. If you've been watching, we all figured out that the Rooney Rule had great intentions. It was supposed to be a way of getting in the door. Now getting in the job is big. I love the fact when you said, Jason, that they built another room because
Exactly.
it is self-evident that they built another room. I looked at some of the history as well too because in 2003 when the Detroit Lions hired Steve Mariucci and after Marty Morningweg got fired, they didn't talk to any black candidates at all.
Nope.
And Steve
Mm.
Mariucci got the job. Then of course you talked about Eric Bieniemy in 2020. You know he was this hotshot offensive coordinator, and everybody passed on him. And now the Brian Flores lawsuit in 2022,
Mm,
he's not just suing the Giants. He's suing Denver. He's suing the Dolphins. He's got an open case with the
right.
NFL right now. So I don't know if teams are not wanting to touch him with a 10-foot pole because of this lawsuit, but I think he may have a leg to stand on. You know, Flores was controversial about his thoughts on Tua Tagovailoa, and there were many people saying, and Tua was talking about, oh, he did all this horrible stuff to me and said all these horrible things about me. That doesn't mean that he hurt him. He was just assessing as a coach.
Right.
So,
Right.
with all that being said, do you think that that lawsuit might do something to the Rooney Rule if he wins?
I mean, I don't think so. I think the biggest thing is I'm surprised he's still able to coach in the NFL. Um, being that he did that because the NFL likes to put their thumb on a lot of people. If you speak up against them, they will make sure you don't ever get in the league again. And the other thing, and that's what makes me wonder, is why you don't hear more from other coaches, why you don't hear players get loud. Because, see, their contracts aren't guaranteed. And they
Right.
know that if they speak up and they have a problem, hey, I am the Miami Dolphins and I have a problem with who you hired. You didn't hire this coach was better and he was black and you didn't hire him. Atlanta, a predominantly black city.
Hmm.
You bring in Kevin Stefanski. And I'm surprised that a lot of the players don't voice their opinion about this because I think they're worried. I think they're worried because their contracts are voidable.
Yes.
If I speak up against the NFL, and the NFL stands not for long. So I wonder if that has something to do with why you don't hear more discussion about this. You don't hear it from the inside. You don't hear it from organizations. You don't hear it from the players. This has been so silent, and that's why here in 2026, 10 coaching jobs, 1 minority hire, no black head coaches, only 3 head coaches in the NFL. That's 9%. And whereas your workforce is almost 70%. Why you don't hear it from other places because the NFL has aligned itself to make sure that you know who's in charge. The NFL, you do not go against the Shield. The Shield is bigger than everybody out here. We control where you play. We control when you play. We control how you play. And we control who gets to play. So I really wonder if that has a huge reason why you don't hear. I would think that after this coaching round of 10 jobs, that you would have heard some clamoring. You would have heard something. Someone would have been screaming, like, guys, what are we doing? This is terrible. You heard nothing. It's very disappointing.
Well, you just said it right, Jason. I mean, not for long. And I mean, we saw that with Colin Kaepernick. Kaepernick went against the Shield. Now, I know there have been times where they said that when guys got hurt and Kaepernick was still in his prime, to me, guys still in his prime right now, probably could go out there and do 10 times better than some of these other starting quarterbacks. But, you know, there has been scrutiny that Kaepernick didn't show up to workouts when he was invited. You know, but if you put all that behind him, when he went against the Shield and took a stand, he was blackballed out of the NFL. Nobody wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole. Same like Brian Flores. Nobody wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole. So I think the NFL used that right there as a mechanism to teach these players that when you do like Kaepernick, when you say, hey, I'm going to stand up and voice my concern on what I feel is right in my personal beliefs, my personal views, no matter how you stand on either aisle, how I feel, when you decide to do that and use this game as a platform, we're going to ice you out. And when we ice you out, you ain't getting back in. So get in line, stay. Here's the line. You know, the old cartoon with the rooster and the dog. When you draw the line, stay behind the line. Don't go behind the line. Don't cross it. Because when you cross like Kaepernick did, you will not be allowed back in our league to play.
Right.
Definitely. And Kent, and when you brought that up, Shawn, and I love that you brought that up about Colin Kaepernick. The thing that gets me the most is that what was going on in the 2000s when you had Terrell Owens and Chad Johnson doing the overly crazy celebrations and Randy Moss, what they were doing, and they were saying, when are these players going to be role models? Okay, well, guess what? This guy decides he wants to take a personal stand on what he feels like is an injustice, and what do? You get rid of him. You glorify the entertainment aspect because it brings you money. Number one, it brings you money. It's cool when it's bringing you money because what they were doing is bringing money, and also too, they were taking their money on top of that too because they were fining them as well too. And what does the NFL do later on? They bring back celebrations when they retire, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. Because I mean, it's okay when we're taking your money and you're being overboard and you're excessive in what you're doing, but we're gonna turn around and take your money at that time. But then when you realize that all the showmanship and all the fun for the fans is gone, you're going to bring it back in, and then you're going to make some money off of it on top of it too. Oh, we can bring this back. Now that these guys are doing it and team celebrations and all this other stuff, because these black players were going all over the place and being figureheads on top of that too. Joe Horn with the cell phone, all those guys as well too. You're seeing that, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, you can't do that because, you know, that's a little too much and you're bringing a bad light to the league. But then later on, when these guys are gone and they retire and you water down the league, let's just be honest, because this league is different from what we watched when we were younger, going into the 2000s, all of that. We watched all of this stuff, but yeah, you weren't supposed to watch that. But now that the league has become a little watered down, you can watch this a little bit. Then, of course, also too the Super Bowl performance as well too, with all of that as well coming about with that. it was a lot of this stuff that was going on. A lot of this stuff has been deep seated, and the head coaching spot is showing you as well too what is being said. But I got a little more as well too, and I want to present this to you because at one point in time, the quarterback position was not as diverse as it was at one point in time. When you have the record for the NFL with the most black quarterbacks starting in the NFL in the beginning of the season this year, with that happening as well too, there was a point in time where the black quarterback wasn't looked at as much. In the 90s, you would see a Randall Cunningham in there and a Warren Moon. You would see these guys playing the quarterback position, but there was not a lot of black quarterbacks.
I mean, Doug Williams, first black quarterback to win
A Super Bowl.
A Super Bowl,
Absolutely.
and that was in the late 80s, early 90s. I'm
Yes.
trying to remember when for the
Absolutely. And he
Redskins
was a
at the
backup
time.
also too, and he was a
Yeah.
backup
Yeah.
as well too. So that's another thing.
Aaron Brooks, the Slink down in New Orleans. He was the reason why I wanted to play quarterback.
Absolutely.
He made quarterback look cool.
Absolutely.
Steve Aaron McNair, God forbid what happened, but we can't talk about the past after his NFL career was over with, but you look what Aaron McNair did in the NFL. He made the quarterback position for African Americans like, this is something we can do. We can be a heavy set and can throw the ball and run the ball.
Yep.
Right.
Dante Culpepper as well too, being the same way, McNabb being in there. Those guys were very good quarterbacks. They went and had success. So the quarterback position actually was able to become more diverse from the 2000s on to now. But here's the thing, the NFL's a copycat league. So a lot of these teams looked at black quarterbacks and said, maybe we can win with a black quarterback, or maybe we can do something with a black quarterback. And it changed the game because now these quarterbacks are becoming more athletic. You got to at least have a little bit of wheels on you at the quarterback position.
Mm-hmm.
It's not straight drop back anymore. You got to be able to move around. You got to have some feet. These defensive players got a little better and a little faster. They're stronger and faster. The speed and power the speed power complex as well too has gotten better. These players got more athletic. But here's the thing also too. Do you think that if an NFL coach, a black NFL head coach, started going out there stringing together Super Bowls, that teams would start to think, hey, maybe a black head coach can get it done, and it may lead to an influx?
I mean, you had Mike Tomlin. I mean, I know he won Super Bowls in Pittsburgh, and he was there for 18 years. Not one losing season. What else do you need? I mean, there's been a lot of Tony Dungy. There's been a lot of successful black head coaches in this league. It's who's marketable, who's going to make you money. I mean, I remember when Michael Vick came out for the Atlanta Falcons. He was electric on what he did. He was. I mean, Randall Cunningham, Warren Moon, to me, were the forefathers of the mobile quarterback. I mean, as far as the African American or black quarterback, those guys were phenomenal, but it wasn't popular. It was the pocket league. It was Joe Montana offense, But once Michael Vick came into the league, you saw these teams go, well, wait a minute. These guys are athletic. They can throw the ball. They can run the ball. We've changed a lot of the rules. So, the quarterback's a little more protected now, but they're also marketable. They're selling shoes. We can put them on posters. We can put them on all this stuff, and we're going to make tons of money selling jerseys. It's marketing. You're not marketing a head coach. A head coach, there's no residuals that come along with a good head coach. You're going to win. You may get a Super Bowl. It's tough. It's tough to win a Super Bowl in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, Mike Tomlin, phenomenal. But how many jerseys did he sell? How many sneakers did he sell? He's not making the league extra money. And that's why you saw the birth of the marketable black quarterback in modern NFL is completely different because it was making the league money. Teams were winning, but it was making them a lot of money. Black head coaches, that's all kind of you are. What are you doing for the team to win? And that's not sexy for the league. There's not a lot of control there. Yes, the NFL can control the head coaches, but they have more control over the players with their contracts and the way it's structured, etc. There's more control there, so they can kind of delegate what those players can and can't do a little bit easier, as opposed to when you put a coach there on a podium right in front of a camera, they can, they better toe the line or you're not going to be a coach anymore.
That makes a lot of sense. Some of these coaches that have been mentioned, Byron Leftwich was mentioned as being a head coach at one point in time. Sean brought up Deuce Staley, those coaches there. Fellas, we gotta talk about this before we get up out of here. What is going to have to change in order for this rule to work?
My personal opinion, what I think is going to have to change is the Rooney Rule right now, when it was written back in 2003, was written for the purpose to get you in the room. Jason said it best. They just built another room onto the room. But what I think you're going to have to see in order to really get a hand on this, you're going to have to start seeing more minorities become owners of these franchises. And with that happening right there, you're going to shake the foundation. I mean, let's just keep it honest. Right now, what they call the NFL, the good old boys club. It was a time when Jerry was selling Carolina because he had come up to it. You had Curry wanting to buy it. You had a lot of people wanting to go in to buy it. I mean, Diddy right now, he's locked up. They said Diddy name was floating around trying to buy the Panthers, But what happened? They X'd him out. They said, no, you're a hip-hop Mongol. You're hip-hop. Curry, you're an NBA player. You don't need to own a franchise. Until you can get more minorities that have a majority stake in the franchise to make those executive high-end decisions, to be the chairman of the board to make those decisions, that's when you're going to see more of this happening. I think the rule will still keep going on, where you still keep giving African-American minorities a chance to interview, but you won't still see that many getting hired because they just said, hey, we bet the status quo, now interview too.
Well said. And now you just had the Super Bowl winning Seattle Seahawks go up for sale. So I'll be curious to see the bids that go in for that. It's going to be in the billions, of course. But that's you hit the nail right on the head. Until it changes from the top, until ownership of these teams and want to see change and really push it, you're never going to see anything change. You can come with all the policies. The NFL can policy and procedure you to the death, but then you're still going to have the token interviews. You're still going to have teams that are going to get around the rule. We're going to find out, oh yeah, we'll interview so and so. I want this guy here. And I'm a Giants fan, and I'm embarrassed that the New York Giants did that. They wanted Harbaugh. That was the big fish. I'm sure they did some interviews to go, to follow the policy, but they were going to give the job to John Harbaugh. They're going to write a blank check and pay him whatever he wanted. It's a good hire from a football aspect. I think it's a great hire. But what we're talking about here today, a lot of teams are making the same excuse. Oh, I want that guy. He's great. I want Stefanski. He's proven himself. I want Kubiak. He's done this, and this. He's the best hire. Yeah, and it just sucks. He's white. No, these teams are using those excuses. That's the next guy. I want the biggest guy and the best coach that's available. No, that's just an excuse to circumvent the rules. But you hit it right on the head, Sean. Nothing is going to change until ownership seeks change, until it starts from the top and trickles down. You're just not seeing that. Those owners are very, very quiet.
Yes.
When you start talking about this stuff. Again, the players are quiet. Other coaches are quiet. Ownership is dead silent.
Because it's a billionaires club. They're all friends. Of course, you don't want to rock the boat. And it's going to be hard to rock that boat. Not saying it's going to be impossible, but it has to be with ownership. Ownership has to look at this and say, well, fellas, what are we doing here? I know we're all buddies, and I know that we have our own clubs and our secret handshake clubs and things of that nature. I get it. But at the end of the day, we have a problem here, and what are we going to do about it? And until other people start looking at them and saying, you guys have a problem, you know what you're doing, we know what you're doing,
Right.
as fans, as higher ups alike, we know there's a problem here. And it's really looking at sport, because the thing about it is representation is important to me, even at 39 years old. Representation is important to me. It was important to me when I was a child. It's important to me now as a man. And also, too, I think that ownership has to understand this as well, too. We talk about candidates, right? Candidates that have proven themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to prove yourself if you don't have experience? How are you going to do that? You can't sit around here and say, well, we made the rule for them. We made the rule so we can get minorities here in the door and in the building, and get them there, because that's what this rule is for, get them in the door. But when you get them in the door and you put them in trash situations like the New York Jets, and put them in bad situations to where, oh, you had your chance. Gerard Mayo, case in point, 1 year in New England, 1 year. And I don't know how true this was, but they said in his contract, he put that he wanted to be the head coach of the New England Patriots when he retired. I don't know how true that is. I have to look that up. But they gave him 1 year. And lo and behold, Mike Vrabel gets fired. And Mike Vrabel fits the culture.
Yep.
He was a player there. And they hire him. Deuce Staley fit the culture, was a player. He didn't get hired. So this is where we have to look at. You can't gain experience if you don't get experience. If you don't get chances to do so. And also, too, if you don't get people building around you. So it's going to be hard to get experience when and once again, try and fail, trial and error. Kevin Stefanski, trial and error. You know, John Harbaugh won a Super Bowl beforehand, but hadn't been back close since. Trial and error. But he gets an opportunity fairly quickly after getting fired. But you have coaches, Mike Singletary being a coach that didn't exist after that. And he coached for my 49ers. I love Mike Singletary, but Mike Singletary lost too many games and they fired him. Also, too, Romeo Cannell being one of those guys.
Yep.
Was with the Bill Belichick coaching tree.
Yep.
He got one chance at the head coaching spot, and
that was it.
And so how can you get experience? Well, how can you have experience when you don't get it? You get one time and one time only, and the clock is ticking as soon as you get this job. And then after that, you have one bad season, you're gone. You either need to sit in front of the TV and be an analyst, which is nothing wrong with that. You can make plenty of crumb off of that. That's great. Yeah. And you don't have near the stress on top of that too. But then again, you also don't get an opportunity to get the stress when you're given an opportunity to open the door, because it's definitely what Shawn said. Door's open. They got the door open. Okay, great. But here's the thing. You got you in the room. You're in the room. That's great. It's good you're in the room. But then, like Jason said, they built another room.
And then the other thing, another thing I want to bring up too is Roger Goodell should not be the commissioner of the NFL. He's been commissioner for 20 years. This is all happening on his watch.
Yes.
So when are you going to take accountability for what's going on? Obviously, you're great at making the owners money. You've done a great job making the NFL as strong as it's ever been. Gambling, you can gamble all you want now. I think the NFL had a lot of to do with that. Yes, you've kind of, again, we've talked about the opening the door. You got the doors open a little bit, but ultimately, you just had 10 head coaching jobs in 2026 and not one black head coach hired. You only have 3 black head coaches in the NFL. To me, the commissioner needs to take accountability for that and step down. So in 20 years, 23 years, the Rooney Rule's been here. You have done absolutely nothing to forward think this and push it even farther than it's gone. And this is the results you have. You've done great with a lot of the low hanging fruit, of a lot of the lower position jobs.
Mhm.
But as far as when it comes to the head coach, you have been silent. You make one off comment during an interview during the Super Bowl, and then you fade away because you know you work for the owners.
That's right.
And if you spoke up and told the owners, hey, you guys need to straighten up, you would not have a job and you would not be the commissioner of the NFL. So we talked about the owners changing. Well, we need to see some change in the commissioner. I think this needs to be like the president. I think commissioner of a league, you only have X amount of years, 4 to 8 years, maybe 2
2 terms.
2 terms. 2 terms. That's it. So you can get some new blood in there. You can get some diverse, but you can't preach diversity when the commissioner of the one of the biggest leagues in the world has never been a minority, has never been a female, and has never been an African American.
Yes, sir.
So how are you going to preach diversity when you look in the mirror? And how long are you going to stay? You're going to stay. How many more years are you going to stay? To me, this is like you have the was it Congress? You can be a congressman until you literally drop
50,
dead,
like 50 years, I believe.
and then,
Yeah.
then when you're dead, they still let you lay there, and you can still be a congressman. It's terrible, and it's embarrassing for one of the greatest leagues in the world. So I think Roger Goodell, fall on your sword. If this is that big of an issue, if this is that important to you, appoint somebody different than you to be the next commissioner of the NFL. Put your money where your mouth is.
Definitely. Now, Shawn, I think that Jason's got his ending. He's got his ending quotes here. I think he got his ending quote. Shawn, anything that you want to add to this?
Well, I think Jason just hit the nail on the hammer right there. I said the owners, and you're right, Roger Goodell, it's on your watch. You're preaching this, but you're not practicing it. And Barry White said it best: practice what you preach. You cannot sit here and say you want diversity and inclusion in the NFL, and then you're not doing that because his hands are tied. He know that the owner's got his hands handcuffed, so it's really not that much he can do. He can say it as much as he want to say it, but actions mean more than words. I'm with you. If you feel like this is something that needs to be pushed, then you as the commissioner of the NFL should be the one driving the ship saying, we got to do better. 10 coaches, no minorities except one, no African Americans. We got to do better. We got to figure out a way of what we can do by bringing in the Tony Dungy's, the Mike Tomlins, all those guys, bringing them in, bringing in players, bringing in Dion, players that can say, what can we do to figure out a game plan where African American can go to an interview and not just be checking the box. That we checked the box. Now let's move on to the real candidates. And you're right. There are just some coaches out there, Harbaugh. There's some coaches out there that when they come up, you can't pass on them. You can't pass on a Harbaugh. You can't pass on a Bill Belichick. Those names right there, when they're on the market, you know that's the guy you want. You're going after them. But there's other jobs out there, the Cleveland Browns. It should not be a reason why the Cleveland Browns, the Atlanta Falcons, did not hire a minority as a head coach for both of those franchises.
Definitely that. My closing remarks would have to be the Rooney Rule must be revisited after this year. The Rooney Rule has been around for 23 years. They made a change in the Rooney Rule to involve gender, women, which they should because women are starting to become integral parts of the NFL. But also, too, integral parts of the NFL have been black players.
Yes.
So when we get to the point where we look at the Rooney Rule from a standpoint, I think the players have to get involved as well too. The NFLPA has to get involved with this as well too. I know that the owners have the money. I get it. But also too, you've got Major League Baseball contemplating a strike in 2027. WNBA, a strike might happen now. Maybe these players got to look at these owners and say, hey, maybe we might have to go on strike. Or maybe we might have to look at this and say, hey, y'all, no disrespect to these coaches, but when 67% of the league is black, and you think that representation is not important to that 67% when you are the majority of the league, then this is where it comes down to it. All right, if that's what you want, then maybe we don't have to go out there. Collective bargaining will be coming up real soon. NFLPA has to get involved in this. DeMaurice Smith has talked about this as well. DeMaurice Smith, who is part of the NFLPA beforehand, he was the head of it. So he spoke on it as well too. There's been times where he spoke about the lack of representation for head coaches and GMs as well too for being black. Maybe the players got to get involved. Maybe the players have got to look at this and say, hey, we're looking at this and we see a problem. Well, guess what? Maybe that field might not have to have a lot of cleat marks in it this coming year with the collective bargaining. Maybe that might be the case. So the problem is there. The NFL does have a problem. And are they going to fix it? Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Share this with a family member. Share this with a friend. Let's get more discussions on this. This is the first episode of Boom Broadcasting Presents Beyond Sports Spotlight. Give us any type of feedback that you like. If you want to see this show again, which I'm pretty sure this will not be the last show that we have here on Beyond Sports Spotlight. This will not be the last episode that we'll have. There are plenty issues inside of sports that need to be discussed. We're taking a break from our shows to discuss this, and there will be more discussion. Make sure to follow Boom Broadcasting. Make sure to watch these great men's shows here on Boom Broadcasting. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the next one.